Hi, this is Kaya with Pantry Apparatus. You're in my kitchen today looking at one of my pantry shelves. I'm going to show you how to make a soup mix today. I love these. They're layered and they're beautiful. They have all kinds of wonderful nutrition packed into these layers of dry bulk ingredients, even some things that are dehydrated from my own garden in here. This recipe is a pea and lentil soup. This is a double recipe for a really large crowd, but I'm going to show you how to make the basic recipe today. It is not original to me. I got it out of this book, Dinner is in the Jar. And one thing I just love about this book is she just makes it very simple and easy to stock your pantry with pre-packaged, so to speak, pre-packaged convenience meals that you know that your family will be nourished and strong and will enjoy as well. So come with me to my counter while I show you how to make this pea and lentil soup. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started on this pea and lentil soup. It is a recipe out of the Dinner is in the Jar. Feel free to take some poetic license with it. I do a few things that are slightly different than the recipe, but I'll let you know what I'm doing differently as we go. I love this book for several reasons. One is that I can do a lot of meals at once ahead of time, and then on a crazy day, I don't even have to think about what dinner is going to be. I do want to show you just a few things in the book. One is that she has a section on using Mylar bags, and so for some people that's a new thing and they're not confident with that, and she really explains and gives you pictures on the best way to use a Mylar bag, and that's for long-term food storage. So if that's something you'd like to do, this book might help you with that. This is Dinner in the Jar. She has a lot of recipes in here that are soups, but a lot of recipes that are not as well. Enchiladas, pizzas, all kinds of things like that. But she lays out what the layers in your jar are going to be very clearly. She gives you the directions on how you will make that into your meal on that night. And then she also gives you for every recipe a page that you can photocopy that are labels for the jar. So if you just don't want to later down the road see this jar on your shelf and say, oh, what is that? I don't remember what I made there. You can just pop that label on there, and it also makes a wonderful gift for an easy meal for somebody. So that's the book, Dinner is in the Jar, and we're going to get started now. I have two different ones sitting here, and I want to show you. This is a double recipe. I'd say for a family maybe bigger than 6 or really huge eaters or something. It makes more than what you might think. Once it's reconstituted, all of the dried beans and things. So that's a double recipe. This is the standard recipe, and this is what we're going to be doing today. So when you're looking at what size jar you should use, you're going to want to use that smaller jar, because you don't want to have any headspace in this jar at all. You want it to be completely full so that the layers won't shake out of it. The layers are just pretty. I mean, it doesn't matter if the layers shake out, I guess, but it's just so nice to look at as it is. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So I'll set those over to the side. I have my jar ready to go. Now, what I have done is I've gone ahead and mixed up the few spices that it requires for the sake of time. But you have most of the ingredients already. They're staples. And also, some of these things are actually out of my own garden. So let me just show you briefly what those things are. Okay, so these are onions out of my own garden that I use in my Excalibur. I put in my Excalibur dehydrator. And although this recipe calls for onion powder, I'm cheating. I'm not really using an onion powder. I'm using dehydrated onion. You can do that if you have somebody like little kids in your house who are funny about onions and texture. You may want to put those in your mortar and pestle before using them. These are my tomatoes. What I do is I make homemade tomato paste out of garden tomatoes, and then I put them on the Paraflex sheet in my Excalibur dehydrator. I dehydrate them past fruit leather or fruit roll-up stage all the way to where they're a nice crisp sheet. So those are the tomatoes. These things are out of my garden. Also, some of the spices are too. I wanted to tell you, the celery, if you're buying celery flakes from your grocery store spice shelf, you're paying way, way, way too much. When you buy celery and you're afraid some of it's going to go limp, slice it up, put it in your dehydrator, put the leaves in your dehydrator from the celery stalks, and make your own for nothing. So anyway, so here are some of the spices, and I'll go ahead and tell you what they are. You have 1.5 teaspoons garlic powder, 2 tablespoons celery flakes, 2 tablespoons parsley, a 1/4 teaspoon of thyme, and an 1/8 of a teaspoon of just regular pepper. So you could play with this any way that you want to and swap out the flavors and things that you prefer. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I wish I were using a wide mouth jar today, but I'm not. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put in the bulk ingredients, the really pretty layers. We need split peas, lentils, pearled barley, macaroni, and rice. Those are the main grains and pastas that are going into this. So what's convenient is that the ratios are the same for almost all of those. So I'm going to do 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of the split peas. So here is my 1/4 cup, 2 tablespoons of split peas, and I'm going to move on and do the same thing with my lentils. Now these lentils, I had to open a fresh bag today, but these are the Palouse brand lentils. We get these straight from the farmer, and they're non-GMO and they're Food Alliance certified, and they are fabulous. I didn't even know I liked lentils until I started eating theirs, honestly. Oops, I was afraid I'd do that. Okay, so I may just throw a few extra in here because I just managed to get them all over my counter. Just throw in a few extra to make up the difference there. So I've already got my first 2 layers here. And so the next thing I'm going to do is pearled barley. Barley is so filling. I always put a handful of barley in just about every soup I make because it is just a filling grain. Very good for you as well. So there's my barley. It was that 1/4 cup and 2 tablespoons again. Now the macaroni is also a 1/4 cup and 2 tablespoons. Now I'll tell you, I do like to make my own homemade pastas, but I like those fresh. So again, that is a 1/4 cup. Let's see if I can keep it off my counter. Nope. 1/4 cup and 2 tablespoons. Okay, if you don't spill it all over your counter, and again, I always use, if you look, I always use wide mouths. I just grabbed a jar. Now I kind of regret that. But anyway, it will fill completely to the top perfectly. So we'll see if we do today or not, since I've thrown it all over my counter. Okay, so now the rice is the one exception on that 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. The rice, you have hardly any in there at all. I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of it, and that's somewhat of a filler as well. If you're not keen on that, I suppose you could do more barley or something like that instead. But I think the multiple grains and pastas in here really increase the nutritional value because they're all stronger in other areas. So we have that in there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. See that there? I'm going to spread those out so they make a nice thin green layer on top of my jar when I look at it from that angle. And so now all I need to do is 1 tablespoon butter powder. 1 tablespoon butter powder. And I'm going to shove my onions in there. And again, normally it calls for onion powder, but because I'm putting fresh onions in there, I'm not really measuring them. It would call for 1 1/2 teaspoons. But I'm just going to shove my fresh onion, well, I should say homegrown onion on top. It's dehydrated. And then now it's time for my tomato powder. And I have to say, I think my tomatoes are beautiful this way. So I'm just going to put a couple of different little sheets of my tomato in there. And then all I need now is my bay leaf. And if you are putting this on your own shelf, and you're thinking, well, I like this idea. I'm going to do like dozens of these and put them on my shelf, and this can be great long-term food storage. I know I could have it up on my shelf for 2 years, and it's going to be just fine for a meal. Then my recommendation is that you actually put an oxygen absorber in there. And I have just completed a beautiful and tasty pea and lentil soup that will make a beautiful gift. Perhaps I could take it over to a new neighbor when they come in to the neighborhood and welcome them. So thank you for joining me. This is Kaya with Pantry Paratus, and we just made pea and lentil soup today. Thank you for joining me.